Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. So GGG put out a post today entitled What We're Working On, which is detailing some of the changes that they're planning to the Scourge League, but also some other changes as well, because I think there's the single most important change doesn't actually affect me, and that's a change that's being made for Standard League players. So they're going through a sort of summary of all of the changes made so far. There have been 5 hotfixes plus a significant patch, and I have no idea why they use such ridiculous numbering systems. So you've got 3.16.0 hotfix 1 through 5. That makes sense. Then it just goes straight to 3.16.0 Bravo. There's no 3.16.0 Alpha, which I would expect there to have been. Anyways, version numbering out of the way. 3.16.0 Bravo came out yesterday and had a couple of key fixes where some of the Scourge monsters that were super lethal took nerfs. The main one of these was the Demon Herder, and it has its ability called Beam. At least I believe that's the one that looks like a Divine Ire being used against us. The reason that this skill was so deadly, it's not that it was too dangerous. The reason was that it was a telegraphed one-shot originally, but the telegraph was happening when you were off screen from it. And that meant that it was just this really unfair feeling one-shot. So the damage from it has been nerfed hard, and that means that the beam skill is now something that is dangerous, and the telegraph is still there. You can dodge out of the way, but it is no longer something that's going to one-shot you unpredictably from off screen. So that was the big change. As well as that, the Blood Orb has been nerfed, which always felt telegraphed and fair to me. I died to it a couple of times, but I did feel like I deserved it every time because it's so... That one stands out so much. Like, that's where it conjures a massive orb above your head, and then that orb drops a couple of seconds later, so you got plenty of time to react to it. That one always felt fair. And then there's a number of other things that were changed that were really ridiculous, like proximity shields. The number of proximity shields has gone down, 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 down. This is a good thing. I was playing a build that didn't care about prox shields, but lots of people weren't, so that was something that has certainly been well received, reducing the number of prox shields. They still exist, they're just not as common as they were. There's also a couple of changes to the bosses in Nightmare. So we found out the exact details of the mechanics of what causes the timer to pause when you encounter a boss in the Nightmare. And what this is that every time you tick over a multiple of 5% health on a boss, the timer pauses for 5 seconds. Now this doesn't stack. So if you knock the boss from 100% health down to 79% in one shot, then you will get the 95, 90, 85, and 80% time pauses will all occur simultaneously, and you'll just get a 5-second pause. But additionally, they've changed it so that upon encountering a boss, you will also get an extra 5-second pause. This is really good because those bosses can be kind of rough to get started on dealing damage to them, especially if there's any sort of monster around providing an energy shield aura to them. That way, you've got the 5 seconds to get started on the boss, and then after that, the Scourge timer keeps going again. And that means that you can't kite the boss indefinitely. If they didn't have some sort of timer mechanic here, the optimal strategy would simply be to engage the boss and then kite the boss with you through the whole map, killing all of the trash, and then kill the boss. And that would not be a fun playstyle. So I think that they've got the right balance here, where you get your 5 extra seconds at the start, you keep getting those extra 5 seconds when you're actually fighting the boss, but when you are not fighting the boss, you'll find out that you'll find yourself back under time pressure again. The other changes that have been made, Baronite Thaumaturges got nerfed finally. I think these have been monsters that have been really over the top for a long time. I've certainly died a lot of times to them. Interestingly, they decided not to nerf the Spectres based on these characters. So Spectres are a very powerful build still, despite having been nerfed a bit in 3.16, and the Baronite Thaumaturge Spectres are one of the more popular choices. There are a number of important bug fixes that took place, probably the most important one being the fix to Watchstones. So there was a critical bug where Watchstones would sometimes fail to drop, and that's the sort of thing that can be really disruptive to progression. Now, this is too late to affect the players that pushed the Watchstones earlier. They've already repeated those citadels, but it won't affect the casual players as they start to get into the Atlas over the next sort of 7 or so days. So that's a big improvement there. Additionally, there's a few funny things that were fixed. There was a bug where Redeemer Influence amulets were providing reduced mana reservation efficiency instead of increasing it. And so this was just one of those sort of gimmicks that was a funny bug while it lasted, but it has been fixed and it was retroactively fixed to existing items as well. Now we get to the big one. So these are the things that GGG want to talk about that they are working on, but that they haven't got anything concrete done yet on. The first one is the standard map conversion. This is probably the single most serious bug in the game at the moment, even though it doesn't affect me at all. I'm pretty much solely a temporary league player, so standard doesn't affect me personally. But this is absolutely crippling as a bug for the people who do play standard. And what's happening is that when you convert your maps from the old system to the new system in bulk through the map tab, there's a problem where if you have more than 72 of a type of map, then the conversion fails. And where this is really coming up a lot is if you attempt to convert your tier 16s from the old system. It's my understanding that every tier 16 from an old system that's not a special map, like a Shaper Guardian map, will attempt to become a summit map. If you own more than 72 of these maps, it's just not going to be possible to fit all of them in your map tab. And as a result, you will not be able to initiate the map conversion at all. This is clearly not a playable situation. It's something that really urgently needs to be fixed for the sake of standard players. And GGG are pretty light on the promises here. They say, we can't give a specific timeline on this just yet, but it's a priority to resolve this before 3.17 launches. Yeah, well, definitely. And hopefully much sooner than that. Really, this is the sort of thing that I think should be fixed by this weekend, if at all possible, even if it means that some of the things that might affect me a bit more don't get done and on time. Ballistic Totems are next. These are currently getting a massively lower number of hit points than they should have. They should have 2.75 times the effective health that they've got currently. This is due to a bug, and it's something that is going to be fixed in an upcoming patch. This one's a pretty serious one so any ballista that's used by totem support has 45% damage taken reduction instead of 80%. And that is a huge, huge deal for those builds. It just means that all sorts of incidental splash damage is killing totems that should be able to endure anything short of a boss slam. Elemental Overload was next. There's a bug where it's not working with traps, mines, and totems currently. Also, it's not working with the skill cremation. And so this is something GGG are working on, and they've got a fix for it on the way. There's a separate, less important issue where Elemental Overload is not reflected on the tooltip for DPS, and this is something I also plan to fix. So really, the first half of this is the important one because it's a build wrecker for a lot of players. The tooltip DPS is something that could be delayed. It's not worth delaying this fix in order to get this one in as well, but both of these do need to get fixed. Then there's the main section, which is on Scourge feedback. And this is basically not much information at all. So GGG say here, we're monitoring all feedback related to Scourge and have a few improvements coming, which we'll outline below. But then when we're talking about what's outlined below, there's not very much at all. We're aware the bulk of players' feedback around Scourge revolves around the rewards it provides. We don't have any updates to provide regarding this, but we're reviewing the feedback and discussing it. I kind of think that one of the things that's coming up here is that with GGG deciding to group not just the lesser currencies like they promised to do, so things like portal scrolls and transmutation orbs and the like got grouped. So what this means is that instead of getting one portal scroll 27 times in a map, you have 27 chances to get maybe 6 to 10 portal scrolls. And each time there's a percentage chance to get these portal scrolls. The rest of the time they don't drop. And this means that when portal scrolls do drop, they drop in large clusters. But unexpectedly, GGG extended this to all of the currencies that are less than a Chaos Orb in rarity. So this includes things like Alchemy Orbs and Fusing Orbs. I kind of feel that a lot of the reason that people feel like a lot less loot is dropping, well, partly we're starting with a fresh Atlas again, and obviously much less loot drops on a fresh Atlas. We're starting without Scarabs again, which means, again, much less loot drops. But then on top of that, there's the fact that you're just not simply seeing as many Fusing Orbs drop, because when fuses do drop, they're dropping in these clusters instead. So it might be that you're getting 50% less Fusing Orb drops, but when they do drop, they're 1, 2, or 3 at random. So it's the same number of total drops, but you're seeing less of them. Then additionally, the League mechanic vomits out so many tainted fusing orbs. Tainted fusing orbs are rare, but they give so much benefit along the lines of a fusing orb. They're so much better than fuses that fusing orbs are worth almost nothing this league as well. So I know I've hidden stacks of one fusing orb from my loot filter already, something I'd never dream of doing in any previous league. And so that means that if I'm right that fuses drop 50% less often than they used to, but they drop as stacks of 1, 2, and 3 randomly, then I'm only seeing 1/3 as many fusing drops. Likewise, I'm not seeing any jewelers drops, I'm not seeing any six socket drops because those currencies are also pretty much worthless in this league. And so this means it feels like I'm getting a lot less loot. Additionally, Scourge doesn't seem to discourage. Like, I'm finding I'm getting quite a lot of loot from the League mechanic, the League monsters, but it's overwhelming that this is perhaps just me. Lots of other people are not experiencing this, and I've certainly not had any big drops from Scourge monsters. So maybe it is the case that the Scourge monsters aren't dropping as much loot as I feel like they're dropping, and so we'll have to find more on that. Like when I've run another few hundred maps, I'll have more to say on that for certain. Perhaps it's just a small sample size at the moment, and I've got an unusually large amount of loot from Scourge. But GGG are monitoring this, and it's going to be a tricky one to work out. I think that one of the best things they could do would just be to have a drop pool of reasonably good items that have like a couple of percent chance to drop in any given map. So maybe you'll clear out Scourge monsters, and if you kill say 60% of the monsters in the Scourge Nightmare Zone in a map, maybe you get a reasonable chance of getting a pile of 15 Chaos Orbs, a reasonable chance of getting some higher tier divination card like the Patient. That would be something that would make it really obvious you're getting this from the Scourge monsters, and also would be something that would just jump out at you. Currently, Tainted Fuses do fit that sort of category. Like, I'm getting maybe one Tainted Fuse every 8 maps or so, and those are a bit of a jackpot when they drop, but that's basically it at the moment. Then there's also a comment here that players have reported it's not obvious enough when the Blood Crucible is full. I really agree with this, making both the sound effect and visual effect much more obvious to deal with this. And there's going to be some changes to some of the Scourge map modifiers. So specifically, only shift on Nightmare on killing a rare or unique enemy. Now, I read only shift into Nightmare on killing a rare or unique enemy and thought it was a 100% chance whenever you kill one. It's actually intended to be a chance to shift over when you kill one. And so I was thinking, gee, this doesn't feel like it's working. And also, shift on reaching full resource, killing enemies drain resource modifiers. So the first one will be a higher probability to shift, but they will clarify that it is purely a probability. And the second one is being modified so that there is a slow Scourge blood drain over time. I'm not sure what to think on this. I know I have found it frustrating with the shift on reaching full resource setup, where you have a problem where you run out of monsters in the Nightmare Realm. So for that reason, I probably will actually find this to be a better system than what's the current status quo. But I do want to play around with it and to be sure. Additionally, there's a bit of an apology for 2 mistakes that were made in the patch notes, where Colossal Tower Shields were nerfed slightly, and there's a veiled modifier for damage over time multi on bows, which was also nerfed slightly in the patch that weren't in the patch notes. Anyways, so that's what's there at the moment. The Scourge feedback stuff is interesting because I'd sort of been thinking that this was a super rewarding league myself, mostly just because every time you get a Tainted Fusing Orb, it's like, oh wow, that is a huge drop. Even if the current market value for them doesn't really reflect that. But obviously I'm pretty much in a minority on thinking that, and so I am curious to see where they go with the rewards. One thing that needs to change, though, is the stupid Scourged rare items on the ground. They just need to be absolutely culled in numbers. I've already done it with a loot filter. My loot filter just flat out hides items that are rare items that are pre-Scourged. Anyways, that's all I got on that. Mega Veil Orbs have interesting results, and I will see you around.